The World War era. Though a very small era in our history and the world's history, one thing is clear. The world will never be the same because of it. The World War era had generated many things, inspiration to different works of fiction, and as well had affected history through technology and the social hierarchy between different countries, political views and clashes, and society's norms, and its changes. The world wars certainly have left a mark, and they still affect us even to this day. But they didn't just affect us in the normal ways, they also affect us in our pop culture. Fiction has taken a huge impact from world wars. Whether it's World War I or World War II or even pre-war, we find the three punk genres that we'll be talking about today. From the Roaring Twenties all the way to World War II, we'll be discussing these three punk genres: decopunk, steelpunk, and dieselpunk. These three punk genres came around the 1990s. Primarily around 1995, dieselpunk began to take center stage in some works of fiction inside certain books and movies and even TV shows. But the coining of the word itself, or the phrase, kind of emerged out of fiction itself. It wasn't like steampunk, where it was coined by anybody, or cyberpunk, where it was mentioned in a comic book. No. Instead, it emerged from the communities. Similar to stonepunk and bronzepunk, like we talked in the last video, it began to take shape from just being. The same thing with decopunk, except decopunk has been around since, well, the 1920s. But it wasn't really a punk genre yet. Technology of advanced kind hadn't really showcased in any form. But Metropolis was one of the first decopunk, well, stories to ever showcase. But it's also good to know that steelpunk, our more lesser known out of these three that we'll be talking about today, has been more of a new surfacing punk genre. So if you're curious as to why there isn't a lot of information to go off of, it's probably because of that. So what better way to kick it off than with a nice dance on the ballroom dance floor? Hit it, boys. Decopunk. Oh yes, decopunk affects a lot of works of fiction. I could name things like The Mask. I could name things like noir stories like The Shadow, or even its comic book adaptation. I could name quite a few things. But I'm not going to do that, one, because my brain's going to get overloaded, but two, it's more important to focus on what decopunk really is and what it isn't. There are things like The Great Gatsby, where Great Gatsby does cover things about Art Deco itself, but isn't quite decopunk entirely. Maybe in small, minor ways, but for the most part, it's more historical fiction than it is decopunk. Decopunk in itself takes technology and ramps it up to 20 in the Deco era. In the Roaring Twenties, the Art Deco style took center stage. And primarily, it took center stage in both architecture and more of the overall aesthetic. This punk genre offers more the aesthetic than it does technology resource. In fact, often with decopunk, even in world building, you can often integrate any resource you want as long as it reflects the aesthetic and feeling and vibes of the Art Deco style. One thing that is common is that there are often tropes like armored bullet vehicles, or tall, mighty towered buildings, zeppelins flying overhead with searchlights shining above into the dark clouded sky, giant statues that could even act as robotic servants or slaves in this kind of clash of divisions of social classes. It's all there. From bullet trains all the way to fast-paced automobiles, and even to robotic marvels that act as revolutionary technologies. It's all there. Decopunk is not really about the technology, but the vibe is more so what the focus is all about. The vibes, though, are kind of my favorite aspect about it. The decopunk itself integrates even archetypes like dark, strange, mysterious detective-like figures. We see this in the 1990s animated series The Batman. We also see in things like the Superman cartoon animated series or movies that showed up, I even watched them as a kid, that are kind of in the 1950s, 1940s bracket, but integrate that Art Deco style. A lot of comic books back then actually were influenced by this style in a lot of ways. In fact, a lot of Batman movies, pre-Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, were very influenced by both Gothic and Art Deco styled art, architecture, and even technology. What's very fascinating is that we find ourselves in the decopunk genre with mobsters and gangs ruling the streets, as well as rich elite watching from their tall ivory towers looking down at the, well, working social classes struggling to get by. It's a clash of classes, and it's also a battle between people's ideals and as well as people's struggles to live. Decopunk itself is incredibly fascinating, but it's a pre-war view. It doesn't have the outlook of what it's like to be in a world war. During World War I, it was referred to as the war to end all wars. An apocalyptic, almost end of the world kind of war. It was the first world war in all of history, not just the United States of America or even of Europe, but the world itself. It was seen as a destructive angel of death coming to get everyone else. Steelpunk is reflected heavily in some of these elements. It's a post-apocalyptic punk genre, while at the same time it can also be more of just a gritty, destructive, and very scavenger-esque kind of punk genre. A lot of the weapons and machinery are made of steel. That is the primary resource that dominates this genre. Things like mechanical machines or body armor that are a little bit finicky, that are made of scraps and leftover steel parts from vehicles or even just like generators, engines, that kind of thing from nearby factories or even towns or villages. Literally, steelpunk is made up of just parts. We see it in things like Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus, the video game itself, based on the book Metro 2033, which are both great examples of steelpunk. Go check them out. I'm actually playing Metro Exodus right now. One thing as you play the game that you will notice is that the weapons jam a lot. The weapons kind of look like they were made out of scrapped parts. You'll see weapons that are using nails for bullets sometimes. Not all the time, but on occasion you'll find weapons that are made of like screwdrivers on the pull action, and as well parts of them are just local pieces of like lighters or car parts. Often we see with steelpunk that it is a genre that is more about the survival element. While decopunk was more the aesthetic, steelpunk is definitely more about the brutality of war. It is inspired heavily by the elements of destruction, of how battles can leave the land scarred and in ruins. In terms of examples that come to mind are things like Scythe, the board game. There is Metro Exodus, which I previously mentioned, Iron Harvest, Iron Council, the book, and as well some less notable honorable mentions are Wonder Woman, and as well as Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows. All of these bear the elements of what steelpunk is all about. It's hard to define. Out of all punk genres, it's the hardest to define, and that's mainly because as a punk genre, it doesn't necessarily have any like basis. But the key elements often with it are its post-apocalyptic-esque aesthetic, its scavenger survivalistic style, and as well, it's more of a battle between those who can survive and have the power to do it, and those who do not. But as the war goes on and World War I ends, and we look at the effects of what can take place after a war, we come into something a little more sophisticated. We look at something really well known and recognizable when it comes to punk genres. World War II is an inspiring event in more ways than one. In some ways, it's what united nations across the world to be able to unite against a common enemy. It even inspired nations within themselves to be more patriotic. And as well, it revolutionized weapons and machinery. A lot of World War I was experimental weaponry and technology. Steelpunk reflects a lot of this, and steelpunk doesn't have to specifically be of any particular era, but it does have a lot of influences pertaining to World War I. While World War II, the one that it influenced the most is dieselpunk. No punk genre has to be in its specific era, but looking at what inspired it helps us to understand better the genre itself. Dieselpunk is based heavily in the elements of what World War II is all about. The United States of America and other countries banding together. Unity was a key element, as well as the revolutionary aspects of the technology, the power to be able to produce products and materials to be able to get across the seas. Diesel reigned supreme during the 1940s. It was a main tool resource where using fossil fuels to be able to power technology and machinery becomes the main backdrop for dieselpunk. In a lot of the fiction, you see giant tank mechanisms, as well as powerful warplanes that are way more advanced than the usual. And as well, battleships that are ready to take out whole cities. And on the main battlefield, we see it even more clearly. Special ops soldier groups using powerful sniper rifles as well as shotguns that can blow right through a door, and other mechanics such as huge mechanized armored suits with flamethrowers and miniguns, and, well, even motorcycles with armored plating, and, well, it keeps going. There are so many elements that come into the ideas of dieselpunk, including the weird science of Nazi Germany. A lot of inspiration comes from Nazi Germany when it comes to not just punk genres, but fiction in general. Mad scientists who were performing kind of war crimes in their experiments. We see this in things like Captain America, the First Avenger, which is a really good example of dieselpunk, and as well of just historical fiction in general. Here we see that superheroes also were popularized by punk genres like this in even the 1940s. Captain America going up against the agents of Hydra who are using technology that are very dieselpunk-esque. Besides the energized weaponry, it is very similar to what dieselpunk is all about. One of the greatest examples, and the first to ever emerge, was Wolfenstein, the old 1980s video game, which then later evolved into the current first-person shooter, adventure, well, kind of I wouldn't say horror, but it's a suspenseful game, which I've also begun playing as well. There they even have robotic machines and mechanical body parts that can replace what you've lost, some limbs or what have you. A lot of the dieselpunk genre is influenced by these various elements, and it's what makes it so interesting, exciting, and fun. And personally, dieselpunk is one of the ones I grew up kind of knowing, with things like Sky Captain and The World of Tomorrow. That one is like one of my favorite stories of all time. Even though it's really cheesy and not like incredibly well paced, I like it because of the aesthetic, the feeling, the characters. You see that in a lot of dieselpunk. The main character being, whether a man or a woman, being a character that is kind of the spitting image of what everyone wanted in the 1940s. And as well, we see this in things like the Rocketeer, where technology that is a part of dieselpunk is coveted because it will help the arms race win, help the Allies, or help the Nazis to be able to win the war. It's what is incredible about these three punk genres. They're reflected heavily and inspired greatly by the times that they are inspired from, whether it be the social divide between the classes in decopunk, or steelpunk with its survivalistic attitude and the struggle for war and survival, or all the way to dieselpunk in its sophistication and its seeking to become the dominant power over the entirety of war and the propaganda it's willing to promote through its smoky, diesel-filled vehicles. In the end, these World War punks show how even a war can change a nation. Thank you, my friends, for watching this video of punk genres. As I've been going through them, I've actually been really excited to get back into them. There's a lot of different videos I want to do talking about like how to craft a villain, how to craft good storytelling, telling my stories. In fact, next week is the release of the next Tales of the Verse episode, so be looking forward to that. But as well, I am really trying to, work on these videos, and I'm hoping that my goal is to reach about 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and hopefully reach 500 by the beginning of the summer. So please share, like, comment, and subscribe. There's the goal. You've heard it now. But thank you so much for watching. And if you want to watch more videos that are with the punk genres or just in general, please click on these videos right next to me. And as always, my friends, I'll see you on the other side of the gates.